Alright, so if you've watched the How to Play Flesh and Blood video I released a little while ago, then you should have a decent understanding about how the game works. If you haven't, then I highly recommend checking that one out before watching this one. I mean, like, still watch this one, definitely. Don't just, like, close the video and move on to something else, but, like, go pull that one up and watch that and then come back here. Don't worry, I'll wait. Okay, ready? Let's take a deep dive look at each of the 4 heroes, starting with by far my favorite one, Katsu the Wanderer. Katsu, if you can't tell, is a ninja. He does kind of look like a Ronin, which is a wandering samurai, but he's a ninja. He's got 40 health, he's got 4 intellect, and he has an ability that reads once per turn effect. When an attack action card you control hits, you may discard a card with cost 0. If you do, search your deck for a card with combo, banish it face up, then shuffle your deck. You may play it this turn. One of the things I did not cover in the How to Play video is the Banish Zone. It's a little zone under the deck that only gets used in specific moments of the game. This is one of those moments. So what does his ability do for you? Well, with no context, it just tutors a card from your deck, which if you've played any card game before, is a really good ability by itself. With a bit more context though, you'll see that this effect can be very powerful if built around. Let's take a look at Katsu's weapon. This is Harmonized Kodachi. Right off the bat that we see this has 1 attack and it's a one-handed weapon. And what does that mean? Well, since you have 2 hands in this game, you can actually run 2 of these. Next, the ability says, once per turn, pay 1 resource, attack. So essentially you can attack with this once during your turn, and you do so by spending an action point and paying 1 resource. If you have 2 of these Kodachis, then you could technically do that twice a turn, once with each weapon, as long as you could somehow get a second action point. Oh, and would you look at that, the second ability says that if you have a card in your pitch zone with cost 0, Harmonized Kodachi gains Go Again. So essentially this means that if you pitch a 0 cost card for the resources needed to attack with this Kodachi here, when the attack resolves, you'll get another action point. So that's how you can attack with both. And this is really the game plan when playing with Katsu, and you'll see this more and more with his class cards. Katsu wants to attack a ton of times during a turn with a bunch of low cost, low damage cards that have Go Again. Speaking of class cards, let's take a look at them. So if you have a sharp eye, you may notice right away that most of these cards cost 0 to play. If you averaged all the costs of these cards together, in fact, you'd be looking at an average cost of 0.75 resources per card. This is great for a class that wants to play a lot of cards in a turn, as you don't have to pitch as many cards from hand to pay the costs of what you want to play. If more of your cards cost 0 resources, then you can play them rather than pitch them. The next thing you might notice is the combo keyword. Combo looks at the combat chain you've created during a turn and gives an extra ability to the card that you're playing if the combo requirement is met. For example, if you attack with leg tap and then immediately play Rising Knee Thrust, then the combo keyword on Rising Knee Thrust will go into effect. If you simply play Rising Knee Thrust before any other attack on your turn, then you'd only be attacking for the bottom little yellow attack value of 3 down there. Obviously, meeting this combo requirement is way better because doing so gives Rising Knee Thrust +2 attack and the Go Again keyword. When it resolves, you'll gain another action point and be able to play more cards, do more attacks, that sort of thing. And here is where Katsu's hero ability comes in. If you had leg tap and your opponent lets it go through unblocked, you could trigger Katsu's ability, discarding a 0 cost card from your hand, of which there are many in the class as you can see. Go into your deck, find a Rising Knee Thrust, banish it, and then pay 0 to play it right after leg tap, thus giving you a 5 attack Go Again action. And it doesn't even stop there. If you have Blackout Kick in your hand, for example, you can pay 1 and play that 3rd on the combat chain. The combo on Blackout Kick looks for Rising Knee Thrust to be in the last attack played, and if so, then Blackout Kick is essentially a 7 attack action. It's got that 4 base attack, and then it gets +3 from the combo ability. Oh, quick aside, all common and rare cards in this game have 3 different versions. A red version which pitches for 1 and has the highest attack, a yellow version which pitches for 2 and has the second highest attack, and a blue version which pitches for 3 and has the lowest attack. This is also true of defense cards, defense reaction cards. The higher defenses are on the red cards, the lower defenses are on the blue cards. And you're allowed up to 3 copies of each version in your 60 card deck, meaning you could have like 9 total copies of leg tap, 3 red, 3 yellow, 3 blue, 9 of Rising Knee Thrust, 9 of Blackout Kick. You get the picture. So these are what the common and the rare cards look like. Now let's take a look at some of the higher level cards, the higher rarity cards, the super rare and mythic cards. So over here in the mythic slot, which is the second highest rarity of the game, we have Lord of Wind and Ancestral Empowerment. Lord of Wind is just a normal ninja action attack, and Ancestral Empowerment is a ninja attack reaction. So you'd play it in that reaction window. Lord of Wind is a really cool attack that doesn't do a ton of damage unless you trigger the combo ability, which involves using the super rare Mugenshi release we'll talk about in a second. If you do, it allows you to shuffle cards back into your deck that you've already used and gain extra attack on the Lord of Wind attack itself. Ancestral Empowerment allows you to give one of your attacks +1, which isn't great, but it's not bad, but really it gives you an extra card in hand, so it replaces itself, which is pretty awesome, especially when you're trying to combo off with all of these cards and search things up in your deck and cycle things back from graveyard into your deck again. It allows you to just do a lot of things, and your opponent has to respect the fact that you're going to be drawing cards and doing crazy amounts of things in a turn and choose whether or not they want to defend that one single little attack or save their defenses for the next 1 or 2 or 3 attacks down the line. In the super rare slot, we have Hurricane Technique, Mugenshi Release, and Pounding Gale. Hurricane Technique is looking for Rising Knee Thrust to be played, so it combos off of that. It gains +1, go again, and if this hits, it goes back to your hand, which is pretty cool, so you can just pop that back and then play it down again. You would not get the combo effect the second time because Hurricane Technique was played, but it puts the card back in your hand and allows you to attack again. Mugenshi Release is pretty disgusting. If Whelming Gust Wave was the last attack in the combat chain, then it gains +1, go again, and then if it hits, you can search your deck for Lord of Wind, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck so that you can then immediately play Lord of Wind after playing Mugenshi Release, which allows Lord of Wind to do all of its craziness as well. It's a really powerful combo, and part of the reason why I like this class so much. It just feels very combo heavy, like you're cycling, you're doing lots of stuff, feels very fast, exactly what you should feel as a ninja, right? And then Pounding Gale is a simple ninja action attack that looks for Open the Center to have been the last attack played in the combat chain, and if so, then it gets to basically double that much damage that it does if it hits, which is pretty cool. So let's say your opponent blocks for 4 and this is only pushing for 1, then it ends up pushing for 2, so it sneaks in a little extra damage. If your opponent only blocks for 3 or something like that, and this pushes 2, it's actually pushing 4. And finally, let's take a look at 2 of the equipment pieces that are specific to Ninja. I'm going to talk about Breaking Scales first, even though it's on the right. Breaking Scales is an arm equipment. It's got an attack reaction, so you can destroy it and target attack action card with combo, gains +1. So that makes a ton of sense for this class because you're playing a bunch of attack action cards from your hand, and then you can just pop one of them to give it an extra little oomph, which might make it hit when it normally wouldn't have, which is pretty cool. And finally, we have the big one. This is Mask of Momentum. This is a legendary head equipment, which means that if you find this in the wild, you're going to want to immediately get an envelope and send this to me because I take care of all legendary cards and I make sure like I'll put it away for you really nicely. But in all seriousness, this card is sick. Once per turn effect, when an attack action card you control is the 3rd or higher chain link in a row to hit, draw a card. If that actually ever goes off, it's just disgusting. Your opponent kind of wants to keep that in the back of their mind every turn because if they let that go off, you're just getting another attack to play down because you're building a deck probably just chock full of small attacks that are pretty cheap and easy to play, and your opponent has to devote a ton of resources just to block, and keep like these little tiny combos from going off and building up into like a Mask of Momentum, draw a card kind of a thing. So again, what is the game plan with Katsu? Well, you're looking to play a bunch of low cost, low damage cards all on the same turn, comboing, cycling your deck, finding the right cards, playing them down in this big long series of events. And again, remember, when your opponent only has 4 cards in hand to defend and the equipment that they're wearing, they have to really decide whether or not they're going to block some of them or block all of them and just burn their turn next turn, take a little bit of damage, take a lot of damage. They have to really know what you're playing towards and what kind of cards might be in your hand. So it's a very skill-intensive class that you're playing, but it requires a lot of skill to play against, which is why I think it's one of my favorite classes in the game, probably my favorite class in the game. Let's take a look at Katsu's play rate in high-level tournament scenarios. This is the results of the Calling Austin's sealed portion of the event. So this is limited, this is sealed. You get 6 packs, you open them up, and you build a deck based on what you get. This is not constructed, so don't think that this is the results of some constructed level play. This is sealed. But if we look at this, then we see that Bravo was played by 32% of players, Reinar was played by 32% of players, Dorinthia was played by 21%, and then Katsu at the bottom with 15%. I think this is really telling because, as we've seen earlier in this video, you're going to need a lot of cards that work together, and you're going to need a lot of synergy to go together for a successful Katsu deck to really swing out and deal a bunch of damage. If you don't have a bunch of those go again cards or sort of those setup cards like leg tap, head jab, those sorts of things, then your rising knee thrusts or your open the centers, all of those cards are a lot worse. And so as you can see, Katsu is the least played in the first portion of the tournament. Now, when you move to the draft portion where people actually have a little bit more control over what cards they're going to be getting, what cards they're going to be picking and putting into their deck, we see actually that there were 2 Katsu players. One of them finished second and one of them finished 5th. So with the top 8 cut of the Calling Austin being a single elimination round setup, you can see that both Katsu players actually were able to win their first match, and then the second place player was actually able to win their second match as well, allowing them to play in that top spot. Looking at the Ninja results for a constructed tournament, there was the Road to Auckland 10K on December 14th over at Card Merchant West City, Auckland, and in that tournament there were a total of 18 different players. 6 people played Warrior, 6 played Ninja, 3 played Guardian, and 3 played Brute. And after 5 rounds, 4 ninjas, 2 guardians, and 2 warriors came out of the melee and made it into the top 8. So as you can see, Ninja is a lot more tailored for constructed level play. You really do need some of those powerful cards and combos to trigger, and ways to search those up are super important. What do you think about Ninja as a class? What do you think about Katsu's ability? Do you like Ninja? Is it your favorite like it is mine? Or do you prefer one of the other classes? Sound off in a comment below. If you appreciate this Flesh and Blood content, if you like this stuff, if you get something out of it, please consider giving me a like and a subscribe. Those things help the channel grow and get more exposure for more people to see all these cool games that we talk about. If there's something else you'd like me to make a video on, leave it in a comment below. The reason I'm making these is because someone actually suggested it in a comment, so I said, that's a great idea, why not make it? As always, thanks for watching.